Hello and welcome to Love My Poland. When you move abroad and decide to live in a foreign country, it'll only be a matter of time until you need your embassy or consulate. Whether you've lost a passport or you've got a question concerning driving on an American driver's license, these representatives are there for you and they've been really helpful over all the years I've lived in Poland. However, I have to confess that there's a lot I didn't understand at the beginning in terms of the real workings of our diplomatic missions. For instance, the technical differences between the embassy itself, the embassy Warsaw, and the consulates. Or the role of the ambassador versus the role of the consul general, and how that affects you as an American living overseas. When I consider all of the tough lessons I've learned, I've come to the conclusion that much of the fault, much of the misconception that I had should fall on Hollywood, as movies can really mislead you regarding what to expect at the embassy. Today, I'd like to talk to you about 8 instances where I was totally and completely wrong and I had to learn some things the hard way. Let's jump right into it. To help me prove my point, I think most of you out there have definitely seen the 2002 film The Bourne Identity, where Jason Bourne is running from Swiss police in Zurich and he enters that American embassy at the last moment. It's a fantastic movie. But let's take a look at a clip here of Jason Bourne going into the embassy, escaping the police, and I would like to point out so many things that are wrong with this picture, with this scene, and why Hollywood sort of, well, lies.
I'm an American.
Hold it. Wait.
You have no jurisdiction here.
Hold it there. Okay.
Okay, number one, first of all, you can't just show up and present a closed American passport and state, I'm an American, and just head on in. It does not work that way. For me to enter the doors of my US Embassy or consulate in Poland and get past the little security, I have to schedule an appointment online prior to arriving, weeks and weeks before, and my passport photo and data are always inspected carefully. I had to get my passport renewed just this March. I made my appointment all the way back at the beginning of January. I had to wait over 2 months just to get in the door. Now, I admit, I'm not sure how it would be if you had a real emergency and you just kind of showed up there like Jason Bourne did, but I would assume it's not that simple. Number 2, in the clip, you saw a crowd of American military personnel waiting outside protecting the embassy at all times. I've been to the Warsaw Embassy and Krakow Consulate, goodness, at least a dozen times, well over a dozen times. I've never ever seen a single American soldier standing guard. I've never seen a soldier at all. Do you know where I was on September the 11th, 2001? That's right. I was inside the Warsaw Embassy with a friend picking up his work visa. He was so excited. We had just received it when we were ordered to leave the building at once. We didn't know what was going on. As we were walking out, we saw Polish police, not military, Polish police arriving on the scene, and they quickly surrounded the outer fence of that embassy. And, in fact, it's Polish police that defend the Krakow consulate as well, not American soldiers. Anyhow, after getting his visa, my buddy and I, feeling both excited and a little bit nervous, we walked to a nearby sports bar to get a drink. We looked up, we saw the TV screens, and the horror that happened. Bad day, true story. Number 3, you likely noticed that Jason Bourne handed his passport to a nice, accommodating American officer who quickly let him in. You know, he spoke perfect American English. I love how the officer shouts at the Swiss police that they have no jurisdiction here, as if the police had no idea. Take a look at this again.
Hold it. Wait.
You have no jurisdiction here.
Hold it there. Okay.
This one always makes me kind of chuckle. Well, the security team working at the embassy or consulate, they've always been English-speaking Polish people in my experience. It's been this way each time I was there over the last 20 years or so. There's no American greeting you as you walk in, but rather hired Polish security who check your passport and verify your appointment number there. And you know, I'm curious, audience, have you ever been to the Polish embassy in Washington or in any American location? Does it work the same way? When you go there for issues, do you encounter a lot of employed Americans? I would really appreciate finding out. Number 4, for the fourth point, continuing on with security. Did you notice how Jason Bourne just strolled on in? There was no security checkpoint. Nobody checked him for weapons. Nobody asked him about why he was there. What's the purpose? The truth is, once you enter the embassy here in Poland, the setup is much like you would see in an airport with a metal detector and an X-ray belt for all the items you bring in. It's just 4 or 5 feet from the main door. I just love how Jason roams through the giant embassy, going up and down the stairs. There's no walls, there's no locked doors anywhere in sight. In actuality, you get specific instructions to travel from room to room. Not all the doors are open, and you are absolutely not allowed to take in any electronics like cell phones. Phones have to be put into a tiny little locker, and you get to hold on to the key when you're in your appointment. I once took my laptop thinking I could show some PDF documentation for a certain issue. No. Listen to this. If you do bring a laptop, they will make you find a local business outside of the consulate that will look after your laptop for a few zlotys. The staff there they won't assume any responsibility for anything. I was fortunate to find a kind coffee shop owner across the street who agreed to watch my laptop for a couple of hours, and I paid him 10 zloty. And forget about taking any sort of earbuds or headphones. Those are also banned. That surprised me. Nothing electronic is allowed inside the facility. I guess I understand why with all the security concerns. I'm not complaining, but hopefully you won't make the mistake that I did. You won't get the headache. Number 5, once you get into the embassy or consulate, if you're an American, you may be surprised by the fact that you'll be dealing mostly with Polish people working as clerks, who are very kind and well informed, by the way. Again, I am not whining here. I love my Polish people. But this one really astonished me. I always assumed an American would enter his or her embassy and have the opportunity to talk exclusively with other Americans. This is unquestionably not the case. In my multiple visits to the embassy or consulate, I've met 2 Americans maybe. And one time it was while picking up my wife's visa for her to travel to the US with me. And on that note, from what I hear, Polish people applying for visas will often deal with American personnel, while American citizens living in Poland will often deal with Poles, the Polish personnel. Is that true? Have you heard the same thing? I might be mistaken. That's just kind of what I've heard in my experience, but who knows? Number 6, a lot of you have asked me whether my 3 sons have both Polish and American citizenship. The answer to that question is absolutely yes, they do. After they were born, we had to physically take them into the embassy or consulate together with a translated copy of their birth certificates, and we had to fill out a few forms in advance. We had to bring all that documentation together. When we did this the first time, I was surprised to find out that I had to prove that I actually lived and studied in the USA. It's absolutely not enough to just be an American citizen with this passport. I had to get, letters showing my name and address in the USA from where I lived, electricity bills, credit card statements, gas bills. I had to provide evidence that I attended high school or college by showing transcripts to really prove that I was genuinely American and I lived there. And in this way, I'm able to pass down my citizenship to my children. I believe the law is that if one parent is an American citizen and the other one isn't, the American citizen has to prove they lived in the USA a total of 5 years before they reach the age of 18. And 2 of those years have to be after they've turned 14. Complicated, right? But that's what was required of me to grant U.S. citizenship to my kids, and would you believe that for my next 2 children, I had to repeat the process from scratch? I'm at the Krakow consulate so often, I'm sure the Polish clerks recognize me by now. However, each of my children were treated as an entirely unrelated separate case. My advice for you, hold on to those letters, those transcripts if you have them. If you're planning on having a big family in Poland, keep a file of all of them. It'll save you huge headaches in the future. Number 7, do not be late. My last appointment for the passport was scheduled for 2 p.m. on March 15th. I hit some bad traffic entering Krakow. I couldn't find a free parking place nearby, and I arrived 15 minutes late. They did not want to let me in. The Polish staff I talked to there at the door said I had arrived too late and I had to leave. I was told to go online, make a brand new appointment, and come back weeks or maybe months later. The drive from Częstochowa is nearly 2 hours long. For 10 minutes, I begged the nice Polish clerk to have mercy on me. I explained my situation. I apologized, and she finally agreed to accept my application and payment for the passport. And yes, you have to be physically present at either the embassy or consulate to do your passport. There is no online or mail-in option, even during COVID, so don't be late to your appointment, whatever you do. However, I learned if you are late, call them, you have the number, inform them in advance, things might go more smoothly. I honestly didn't realize it was so strict, but hey, I'm Russell, not Jason Bourne. Number 8 for our final point today. If you get in trouble with the law, do not count on a special embassy agent in a fine suit to come to your rescue, like you've seen in dozens of movies. No. I'll give you a good story. My oldest sons often play sports tournaments just over the border in the Czech Republic. I love going to the Czech Republic. In our last tournament, my son and his friend, they were running around and they accidentally wandered onto part of a field where another active game was taking place. The kids had no idea they had crossed over. There's no clear boundary between the fields. Well, a middle-aged coach screamed at my son and his friends in English, and he said, "Get off the effing field, and what the F are you doing?" Oh boy, I was a few meters behind my kid, and F-bombing my son is not going to work. Needless to say, I was ready to handle that coach right there, and I would have if it weren't for the fact that we were walking back to the bus to go back to Poland. Well, during the bus ride home, I just kind of thought about everything, and I wondered what would have happened if this situation got out of control. What if we got into a fight and I got arrested? What would I do? So I wrote to the embassy. I know it sounds crazy. I wrote to the embassy in Prague asking, hey, if something like this happens, what steps do I take? They wrote back the next day that I should do everything in my power to avoid any kind of physical conflict, and they made it clear they will not get legally involved in such matters. They did, though. They said, the best we can do to assist you, Russell, is here's a list of embassy-approved English-speaking Czech lawyers on the website. Here's the link. Just go to it, choose one, and don't get in trouble. That's it. That's all they can do to help you. Don't get in trouble. That's my advice. Well, as you can see, what we see in Hollywood can really differ from reality. Again, in no way am I complaining about the American embassy. That was not my goal. I'm rather sharing my experience and misperceptions about the way that I thought it all worked, and I realized how wrong I was. The last thing I'll say is that having a consulate and embassy at your disposal, it's a real blessing. And any American living in Poland, if you haven't done so, or an American planning to come to Poland, you should sign up for what's called the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, STEP, as they call it. They contact you in case there's any emergency. It's been really useful to get regular updates by email on the frequently changing COVID rules in Poland. Gosh, it's been a roller coaster with all these changes and rules, and it's been nice to see everything in plain English. I'll put a link to that in the description so you can sign up. Thank you so much for watching today. I am so curious to see what you're going to say. If you contradict me, if any American out there has had a totally different experience, I want to read that too. I'm simply sharing with you what I experienced. If you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. Click the button right here on the picture of me and my 2 sons with the police van in the back there so you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.